Hello, my name is Kai, and I am a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. Occasionally, I had to go on visa runs, and the first school that I became part owner of was a mess. When I got to peek behind the curtain as a part owner, I found out why teachers weren't getting their visas on time, or why their housing wasn't being set up ahead of time. There wasn't a lot of budgeting going on. There were not significant events planned out on a table with due dates. The curriculum was good, and we had students coming in, but the day-to-day administration was what I was being invited in to help with, because it basically didn't exist until those responsibilities were given to me after I joined the school administration. A big problem with this was getting visas for the teachers we hired at our school, or getting them housing, that we had agreed to get them, both of those. And then I would find out that a teacher had arrived and there was no apartment ready or hotel or work visa set up for them yet, and we would have to scramble and do that. And this happened from the bottom of the school straight to the top, where I was having problems getting my visas. And occasionally I'd have to make visa runs to other countries, which just means you fly out of the country and then fly back in so that your tourist visa renews, so I could wait the extra week until my work visa would arrive that we had just scrambled to apply for and put on an urgent notice with express mail. Because that's about as basic as it gets. If you're going to be working in China, you need that working visa. And in this instance, my new working visa was being handled by the other 4 administrators of the school. How much of a debacle this needlessly turned into is a big reason why I stopped working with those people and teaching at that school after I had worked there for a few years, and many things were going very well in China. For me, personally. But I knew it was time to stop working at that school after a while, because of events like this. We now had 5 owners of the school. There were the 2 original owners, Justin and Tom. Then they added me on because I could make curriculum, schedules, teach the new teachers, bring in new students with demo classes, train and organize the school. I just did a lot of good business stuff, so they wanted me around because they were having trouble running the school before I showed up. They were, in fact, going to close the school, and that's how I ended up becoming part of the administration. Then, because they were still running out of money, which I don't understand, and that is more fully explained in the episode where I talk about how I opened my second school. But anyway, they didn't have money, and so someone offered to invest in the school for part ownership, which they agreed to. And then another person offered to invest in the school for part ownership, which the original owners, Justin and Tom, agreed to. I said no to both of the new investors, but I didn't have enough information on how Justin and Tom were spending so much money, and so I couldn't provide them useful solutions. Also, they didn't tell me this was happening until they had already invited people in for investing meetings, and they were already out of money somehow. So there was no way I could have come up with a solution on the spot after everything had already happened. So that's how we ended up with 5 people as the boss of the school, which, as you can imagine, made administration somewhat difficult. And we would have at least 1 meeting a week, often 2 or more. And anyone who has meetings knows those were the bane of my existence. And that is why when I opened the second school, first rule was no meetings, and I pretty much resolved to never be in a position where I would have to attend a meeting again. The 2 new investors were David and Edward. Dave had pretty much stopped working in any useful capacity at the school after 6 months. He still showed up for meetings sometimes, but he was a go-getter, and he was very rabid in his pursuit of profitable businesses. So although the agreement was that he would run certain parts of the school, I ended up running those parts of the school. and David just wasn't there a lot of the time. He was constantly pursuing newer projects with the promise of profit behind them. The newest investor with a very large stake, I believe he invested the most, was Edward. Edward was supposed to be in charge of getting the working visas because he was Chinese and could get that issue done more easily than other people could. Justin was on hiatus at this point, just taking a break from the school in general, and Tom was still in Sichuan. With Dave taking a back seat and also pursuing other leads on profit, it was mostly me and Edward at the school, and Edward basically acted as principal, and I was running most of the day-to-day operations outside of payroll. Schedules, training, maintenance, promotional events, the holiday celebrations. And I do want to point out that with all of my problems with this school, I always did get paid. Sometimes it would be a week or two late, but I always got paid the full amount eventually. And I'm not a stickler for a schedule, so that didn't really bother me. The lack of accountability, as in this story, by the other owners and administrators of the school concerning the tasks they had set for themselves, is what eventually prompted me to make an exit. In this case specifically, I needed that new work visa, or I would have to go on a tourist visa run to Korea and back. We'd have to cancel my classes or reschedule other teachers who already had class loads on short notice if this wasn't taken care of on time. The 5 of us administrators had a group chat. I checked in with everybody 2 months before my visa would expire to check on the timeline of the working visa that Edward already had coming in. I was assured by Dave that nothing would be going wrong because he, 2 TAs, and Edward were all working together on the visa to make sure it went through without a hitch. They had gotten visas for teachers before. This wouldn't be an issue. The problem was that I was at the top level and I had to deal with the teachers whose visas they had messed up before and consistently. But I couldn't get it myself because the working visa needed to be applied for by the Chinese owner of the business, so Edward had to be doing this with support from Dave and TAs. So I'm already asking about 2 months before I even need to go on a visa run. So I told all of the other owners working on the visa, on my working visa issue, if I cannot renew my working visa, I'm going to have to leave, go to a new country, and then come back, and then we can wait for another week or two while, you finish up that work visa for me. Other than the message, we're definitely working on it. I didn't get any updates about the visa when I asked for them each week or so, but I was told each time that my new visa was already on its way and it would definitely come in before the current visa expired. That's at like 6 weeks out or something, because it was already on its way. I made it very clear every time we had a meeting that the sooner my visa came in, the better, because if I have to leave at the last minute, I won't be around to help with any situations that arise at the school, which was a big part of what I did. We had a lot of teachers at the time, 7 or 8, I don't know, different teachers, and if one of them didn't show up, I was the one who went in and taught their class. Or if we had new teachers, I was the one who trained them. If we needed curriculum made, I made the curriculum. If we had to do demo classes, or if we needed to organize the TAs to complete a project, like handing out flyers or just general promotion, I was usually in charge of a lot of these, like I said, daily operations tasks in the school. And I had seen visas not get processed by my co-owners before, and I wanted to make sure that mine would get done because not only would it be inconvenient for me, who would just have to leave on a mini vacation basically, it would hamper the operations of the school, and it would take them a long time to catch up because they didn't usually fix these problems that I was very accustomed to fixing. I have the text messages from that time, and that's what this story is typed off of, the exact text messages that we sent to each other in and out of meetings, the notes I took in meetings also. I reminded the other managers that the other 2 times my working visa hadn't worked out right away. I had to fly to other countries last minute to take care of it myself. And if that happens, then we're going to have to cancel all of my classes because Dave isn't teaching at the school, Justin's on hiatus, Tom is taking a break in Sichuan, and Edward was the principal. He wasn't a teacher. So if I was made to leave the country suddenly, then the school would be in a lot of trouble because I had a lot of students that I was responsible for teaching. Now, you might think with 8 different teachers, we would spread that out a bit, but that was another problem. We would hire new teachers who didn't have much to do because the other owners wanted to keep my classes under me, which is a good idea, but then we don't need new extra teachers that we're paying. I was outvoted on this point 4-1, so we kept hiring new teachers and kept paying them full salaries despite not having them work. The other administrators believed it would be good to have these teachers on hand, because eventually we would need new teachers. Not a great argument, from my perspective, to be spending all those salaries on teachers we weren't using effectively. Now, Dave and Edward both told me that they had just gone to the visa office, everything was going through correctly, and my visa was on the way, and it would definitely arrive sometime in the next 6 weeks, shiny, valid, before I would have to leave the country to go on any kind of visa run. I brought it up privately later with Dave, once a week in text messages and in managers' meetings, to make sure that everyone knew I was concerned about getting the visa on time, and I knew what would happen if we didn't get the visa on time. I knew that the school would be short-handed because I was teaching a large portion of the classes. I was also the tech guy at that school, so when something went wrong with the computers or the projectors or anything, I would go in there and fix it real quick. But that was the days that I was there. If I was not there, if a teacher couldn't figure out how to connect her laptop to the projector, or he didn't know how to open up a PDF because it was a different type of PDF, something like that, classes could be canceled for that day if the issue wasn't resolved right away, because the classes are only 45 minutes in total. So if you miss 10 minutes of the class, the parents are going to be very upset about paying for that class. But if all of those other teachers don't know how to fix anything technical, then they're out of luck because I'm not there to troubleshoot. So that's why I sent messages to everyone privately who was working on it and got assurances that it was on its way. And every time we would have a meeting, I'd bring it up in general and just say, remember, I do need that working visa, or I'm going to have to leave the country for a while. So now we're 5 weeks out from the expiration of my current visa. I told all of the managers again at our meeting that if I didn't receive my visa in 2 weeks, I was going to buy a ticket to Korea because I would have to obtain a tourist visa for China in Korea because I was familiar with the visa agencies there, and I knew that I could finish it in like 5 days, which is pretty fast turnaround for a Chinese visa. But I made it very clear that if that happens, I will be out of the country for at least 5 days because I would need to get a whole new visa if my working visa that was coming in didn't arrive in time. And I would be gone 5 days, even though the emergency time is less than 3 days for a fast visa. You can pay for a priority visa, basically. But if I left the day before my visa expired and I worked up until that day, the next day was the weekend, and visa agencies are not open over the weekend. So I'd have to add 2 days to that 3-day visa processing time, and I would be gone from the country, 1, over the weekend, the busiest days of an English school, and 2, for a full 2 extra days in general outside of the school, so I would not be there to help with anything, including, importantly, the Halloween party that was coming up the weekend after my visa was set to expire. Because my absence would affect so many parts of the school, I made sure to make the situation very clear during our group meeting where all of the owners were present, as I had the previous weeks every time we had a meeting. Everyone agreed. Tom was there on Skype, Dave, Edward on either side of him, me in there, and all 3 of them were like, definitely, we get it, that visa is coming. So you won't have to go to South Korea to get a new visa while we're waiting for this new visa to come in. No worries. They all agreed that the South Korea plan was a solid backup. I sent messages to each of them to record that I had talked about South Korea. We had all agreed that I would go to South Korea if my visa did not come in on time, because I needed a visa. And like I said, everyone agreed it was a good backup plan if my new work visa didn't come in. So 2 weeks pass without any updates from anybody. So now I'm 3 weeks out from my current visa expiring. I send out an email to all of the managers questioning the status of my work visa. I am getting worried about canceling classes, which parents don't like to do and I really don't like to do, for many reasons. The response was identical to all the responses I had received for the past 2 months. I was told that if I really needed to go to Korea, the school would buy me a plane ticket there, I would get the new visa, I'd get back, and my work visa should arrive in the next month or so. I said, okay, I will keep working until my visa expires, but the visa that's coming in now that I need is very important, because if I don't have one, I could be kicked out of the country permanently, and then I won't be around to teach at all, which is a large portion of our student class load, and I wouldn't be able to deal with any of my company responsibilities. Everyone agreed, again it's in text message writing, that they all understood, and agreed that that was the plan, those were the consequences, okay. Cut to, according to the date of these text messages, about 2 weeks, a little less, 11 days before I know I'll need to buy a ticket and go to South Korea. I let Dave know that, hey, this is really the last time I'm going to ask for an update about the visa before the school needs to buy a ticket for me, because at that point I'll have less than a week left if I wait another week, and I've been asking them for major updates once a week or so because I'm not receiving any updates. So I suggest, if we're going to go that route, I can just buy a ticket today, 11 days out, so that this doesn't turn into an emergency in another week, and I don't have to spend what might be a much longer time, because there are no tickets so close together, in South Korea. This is important because I know through questioning all of our employees that none of the managers have informed any of the parents that I will be out on a visa trip yet, and they haven't made any contingencies scheduling the other teachers to take over my classes. During those owner meetings we had, I brought up canceling or rescheduling my classes multiple times. I was told that they would definitely reassign my classes to other teachers, and it just kept not happening. Everything is just running like normal, despite bringing this issue up and my potential absence up to the other managers once a week, at least for over 2 months now. I am again told by Dave that the company is handling the visa, not to worry about it. We still have 11 days, it's definitely coming in. Every time I brought it up in the meeting, Dave would say that same thing and then turn to Edward and say, we're definitely working on that visa, right? And Edward would say, oh yes, everything's coming through on time, it's all taken care of. But nothing was being taken care of as far as I could see. But I had decided that I was going to take care of my responsibilities and they would take care of their responsibilities. And if they didn't, they would have to deal with the consequences. I am kind of excited at this point. I half figure that they're going to screw it up. I know that the ticket prices from Beijing to Korea don't fluctuate too crazy from 1 week before your flight to 6 months in advance, so the price issue isn't a huge problem. I'm kind of excited because if they screw up this visa, like has happened with other teacher visas, I'm going to get this little vacation in Korea, which I'm just going to have a very long weekend in Korea hanging out. I won't have to go to the Halloween party that I had to organize but did not want to participate in, just because we do so many parties and I participated in a lot of them, and I would just have an extra couple days in Korea to hang out. Oh, and when I mentioned the Halloween party, it's not a Halloween party for the staff. It's a Halloween party for the children. It's a promotional event so that people can see how fun our school is. So you have to organize, this was Halloween, a haunted house and all the food and the music and the activities, and then run that whole party for at least a couple hours. So I was fine on missing out on that and hanging out in Seoul for a while. This is why I suggested multiple times, well, why don't I just go now? We get the priority visa, takes 3 days maximum, I'm back here. If we wait until the day before I stop teaching, The 3-day visa trip is going to turn into a 5-day visa trip because the visa offices are all closed on the weekends, and I won't be there to help out with the Halloween party. So I'm going to be gone 5 days. I've brought this up multiple times to all of the other managers. This time when I bring it up, when we're 11 days out or whatever, Dave's eyes widen in the meeting and he says, "What? 5 days? Jeez, man, that's a long time. Why didn't we know about it?" So I remind him of our several conversations regarding my visa over the past 3 months or so, and he agrees that I have been asking him about my visa a lot, pretty often, and that he has told me he and the company were handling it. But I still didn't have my visa. So he acknowledged that we had talked about it multiple times for a very long time, and I still didn't have the visa I needed, to avoid that 5-day excursion if I had to wait until the last day to leave for the visa. Which everybody wanted me to just keep teaching like normally. Edward said, "Well, look, the visa's been coming this whole time. I've been following it. We still have 11 days. It'll definitely be here in time. Just keep teaching your classes. It should be fine." 1 week later, we are now having our October 22nd manager meeting. And I remind everyone that I'm going to buy a plane ticket now, as we have all previously agreed on. This is how that conversation goes. Me: "Okay, so I know that I can wait until about 2 days before the flight, that ticket prices to Korea won't change from Beijing. So I'll buy a ticket Monday morning at the latest." Edward: "Okay. And how long will you be gone?" Me: 4 to 5 business days from next Wednesday, the day before my visa expires. Since we haven't applied for a priority visa, it's going to take 4 to 5 business days from next Wednesday. So I'll probably return the following Monday or Tuesday. Tom: "Okay, got it. Will you be back by the weekend?" Me: "Nope, I will be in Korea until the following Monday or Tuesday." Edward: Okay. So can you participate in the Halloween party that is on Saturday?" Me: "No, I'm leaving on Wednesday, and I will not return until Monday or Tuesday. When I have my visa in my hand, I'll buy a ticket back, because I can buy same-day tickets." Dave: "So, altogether, how many days?" Me: 4 or 5 business days from Wednesday, plus the weekend. So I'll be back on Monday or Tuesday. As soon as I have the renewed visa, which I should receive on Monday or Tuesday, the 4th or 5th business day, I'll buy the return ticket that same day and come back. Edward: "So, what about your classes? Should we cancel your classes on Wednesday?" Me: "Since I won't be here to teach them, and no teachers have been scheduled or are available those days, we should cancel my classes until Tuesday." Everyone now looks like they have heard for the first time that I will have to go on a visa run because my visa is not here. So 5 days later, on Monday morning, the 27th, I purchase my ticket for the 29th, for the afternoon after I taught classes for that day, and forward the ticket confirmation to the other managers. I send out a mass text to them, in addition to the email, that says, "Okay, I'm leaving on the final day. The weather looks fine. It shouldn't be a problem. I'll be leaving on the 29th. I forwarded all of you in email the ticket confirmation." I get 1 thumbs up emoticon from Tom as confirmation, as any response from all 3 of them. No response from David or Edward, and Justin is still on the hiatus they've been on for the past several months. The next day, Tuesday the 28th, I work until 9 p.m. I have 1 late class, that's why I'm working so late that day. I ride my bike home, take a shower, jump on the subway, and catch a ride to the airport. I get there a little after midnight. I don't want to go to bed and then wake up and then have to get ready and then go to the airport early in the morning and get all ready. I'd rather just go to the airport, hang out in the liminal space, watch a bunch of TV and eat some food, have a beer or 2, and then jump on the plane at 8 or 9 in the morning, whatever it was. So I get there very early morning on the 29th, like 1 a.m. or something like that. I start hanging out, just watch TV, like I said, veg. And then at 5 or 6 a.m., I send out a message that morning that I'll be getting on the plane in 30 minutes and that I'll see everyone on Monday or Tuesday. I ask Edward to remember to cancel my classes if Tom can't cover them. No replies from anybody. It's still pretty early, so maybe they aren't up, whatever. I have confirmation from all of them on multiple dates in multiple messages that they know I am going on this visa run. So I get on the plane. The plane lands in Korea at 12:45 p.m., a little afternoon, and I beeline for my favorite visa agency. The guy that works there is cool. He's very knowledgeable. He's just good at his job. So I get right there. They are closed. All of the visa agencies, luckily, are in the same neighborhood in Seoul. So I walk around the neighborhood and I think of which one to go to. I choose one or two and haggle with them a bit, and I find one reasonable guy who haggles down to the price that I'm used to paying with my guy that I would have used before. So I turn over my passport, fill out the forms, log into his Wi-Fi, turn the application into him, confirm that I'm paying for priority mail, the quickest possible turnaround, and begin my 5 to 6 days of goofing off in Korea while I wait for the visa to come back. It is just at that point where my visa application is turned in and now I'm playing the waiting game that I received the message from Edward. Hey, are you at the school today? The parents are saying you're late for class? I am struck dumb, and I shake my head and message back, I'm in Korea now. The agency I often use is closed, so I found another one and the application is already taken care of and submitted. I get no answer back from Edward. So I go walk about town, go to the cartoon museum, then hang out in the bar district that I know. I have marked down that there was a new cafe selling Reubens. I got a Reuben. A Reuben panini. It was good. And about 24 hours later from our previous conversation, Edward asks when I will be returning. 4 to 5 business days, I respond. Since I submitted the application on Wednesday, I will receive my visa, buy the plane ticket, and then return on either Monday or Tuesday. I immediately receive a reply from Edward. This is a very long time for you to be away from the school. I remind Edward that I've been talking to them over message, email, and in person about this visa trip for well over 2 months. He doesn't reply. Later that night, I receive a message. This is like 8 hours later now. Edward. We have the Halloween party tomorrow, and you can't make it here to the Halloween party. Me. No, I can't. I'm in Korea getting the visa we talked about. Edward. You know, Dave has a cold, and Tom is covering one of your classes while you're off in Korea, and you don't even seem to care. I firmly remind him of the multiple in-person meetings, the multiple emails and multiple text messages he and all of the other managers have been exchanging with me about not only my working visa, but this specific trip for the past 3 months. Edward insists that he wasn't there in the meetings, didn't receive any messages, and that we needed to have a meeting about the costs of this trip when I returned. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I kept drinking beer and hanging out in the cartoon museum. I received my passport and visa on Tuesday morning around 10 a.m. I bought the only reasonably priced ticket for 3:25 p.m., 5 hours later. I got to the Beijing airport around 5 p.m. and got back into the city by 6:30 p.m. So, same day I got the visa, got the ticket, and got into the city. Dave, Edward, and I have a meeting. They both have pouty faces on. Edward starts off with, You neglected to tell Dave, Tom, or I how long the visa trip would take, so we had no idea when you would be back. Me. We've discussed all of this multiple times. Do you remember me mentioning my expiring visa since August, or any of the emails and messages I sent out to the managers over the 2.5 months since I first brought it up? Edward. No. And I was like, okay. Here are several emails and text messages from me with personal responses by all of you confirming my leaving for this amount of time on this date and returning on this date at about this time. And I pulled up basically a PDF of all the messages I had from them and all the emails I had from Edward, Dave, and Tom with all of this information in there because we had talked about it so many times over the 2 months that I'd been waiting for this work visa. including their responses to and confirmation of the visa trip. Edward says, "Okay, I remember those, but I didn't know how long you would be in Korea." So I point to a line of text and respond, "Right here," I wrote, "If I leave on the last possible day, Wednesday, I will be in Korea 4 to 5 business days, plus the weekend. I will return on Monday or Tuesday." Under that, from you wrote, "Okay, got it." I have multiple messages from you and Dave and Tom, and we've talked about it in person many times, all agreeing to these dates. So I turn to Dave, who's also in the room. "Dave, do you remember talking to me about the visa run?" Dave: "I remember talking about it with you several times, but I have to admit that I wasn't really paying attention to all of the details." Me: "Okay, those details were these numbers that you answered. Do you remember the Wednesday meeting in person that we all had, where I reminded Edward, Tom, and you together that I would be back after 4 to 5 business days, leaving Wednesday, returning Monday or Tuesday?" Dave: "Well, yeah, I remember that." Me: "Edward, do you remember that?" Edward says, "I remember you saying 4 to 5 business days multiple times, but I don't know how long that is." So now we all agree that everybody in the meeting knew that I would be gone for 4 to 5 business days, but at least one of them didn't realize the length of time involved in 4 to 5 business days, even though I explained when the visa offices were closed that they would not be open on the weekend, and that's why 4 to 5 business days would turn into those 6 or 7 days I'd be gone, leaving Wednesday, getting back Tuesday. I mentioned the specific dates. I mentioned that I would not be here for the Halloween party. There were no ambiguous dates. And now in this meeting after I had returned, I was holding their written responses and confirmation of those dates so that they could read their own responses and confirmation. The scolding, I guess, continued anyway. Edward: "That's all fine, but your time in Korea hurt the company because of lost or rescheduled classes." Me: "If I don't have a visa, I can't work in the country at all. If I am kicked out for not having a visa, I can never return, which would hurt the company much more than the few days of classes I asked you to reschedule teachers for." Edward: "Well, you chose a late flight on Tuesday, because when I checked C-Trip, there were more flights, all at the same price you said, but at an earlier time." At this point, Dave jumps in and says he does need a visa to be in China, and he got back on Tuesday, like he said he would in the messages. Oh, C-Trip was the name before Trip.com, where we did a lot of our ticket buying, because it was a Chinese company, so you got good deals from Beijing. Edward still talking to me: "If you had bought a ticket at 9:45 a.m., like I said, you could have been back here." Me: "It takes 2 hours to get to the airport from my visa agency when I messaged you that I had the visa at 9:45 a.m. I'm not going to get there until noon. There were 3 available flights on C-Trip. 2 at 1:05 p.m. for $800 each, and another one at 3:10 p.m. for $220. I flew out 2 hours later and saved the school about $600. Edward: "Well, then you didn't give me enough time to offer better advice." Me: "I've been bringing up the visa trip for over 2 months. I was told directly, multiple times, by you and the other managers that the company was taking care of it and not to buy a plane ticket. I told you that if I didn't get the new visa, I would have to buy a plane ticket and renew the visa myself. That's done now. I have the visa, so we can wait for the work visa to arrive in the next week or so." Edward then threatened to cut me out of the company for being so selfish and not thinking of the company's well-being. After all, he pointed out, Dave had a cold, and Tom had to run the Halloween party all by himself without you. Edward then told me I was leaving China again next month on another vacation, and that all I tried to do was get the most out of the company without thinking about what's best for the company. The trip he was referring to was to fly to my best friend's wedding, a friend I have literally known since I was 1 year old. I had written confirmation from and to all of the other managers that I would be taking this leave 7 months prior before it happened, and reminding everyone about it every month or 6 weeks or so. I pulled up one of the emails between me and Edward, where Edward had written, "A few days leave is no problem, especially since this is your first leave ever. So we'll see you when you get back from the wedding. Have a great time." 6 months later, in this presently taking place meeting after I returned from the Korea visa run. "Well, according to your contract as manager, you don't receive your company's share if you have any unapproved class cancellations." Well, it was approved. We all approved it in April. Then we talked about it for the past 7 months, and here's the email where we talked about it. Edward, "If I had known in April what would happen in the future, I wouldn't have approved it. Therefore, I'm not approving it now." "Well," I answer, "pre means before. The trip is already approved. We've all agreed to it." Edward says, "There's one definition of cancel, and you are canceling and nulling your contract." It's probably about this point that I have decided to leave the school, because this is not the first time this kind of situation has come up. And reading between the lines, and from context, and business history, Edward is probably upset because I wasn't there to teach classes for a few days, because he was responsible for scheduling at that time. Nobody else taught any of the older kids like I did, and he had to deal with a bunch of parents. So I knew that the thing he was most upset about was actually just me not teaching classes. He wanted me in the classroom more. So I try to wrap things up with, look, there's already a 5-day holiday during the week that I will be attending the wedding. I scheduled my trip that way so that it wouldn't negatively impact my students or classes. So we only actually have to cover 3 school days because there's a 5-day Chinese holiday. Now look, we can move the starting date of my leave up 2 days, since I don't work those 2 days, so there's no classes to cover. The company will pay the balance to change the cost of my ticket, and then we only have to cover 1 of my class days." Edward eagerly responds, "Yeah, we can do that. That makes sense. Dave, what do you think?" Dave, on his phone for the past 5 minutes, says, "Yeah, sure." The meeting kind of cooled down after that point. Dave and Edward were very happy that I had solved their concerns the next month. After that conversation ended, Dave mentioned that they'd been trying to work out Ella's visa situation for the past 2 weeks but didn't know how to do it. So I pulled out the main schedule, scheduled a trip for her to Hong Kong, rescheduled her classes to be covered by other teachers in about 10 minutes. Dave was nodding, watching me do this. Edward looked at the laptop afterwards and said, "Great work, thank you." He left the room, Dave left the room, and from that point forward, I never let Edward participate in any business decisions or programs again as long as I was participating in them. And I did not. When I had to schedule visa runs for the teachers, I sent out an email explaining what I was doing. I used the company card. I gave instructions to the teachers. It got solved. When I had to train new teachers, when I had to come up with a curriculum, whenever anything happened in that school from that day forward, I did it myself. I sent an email to the other managers saying, "This is what I'm doing." Never asked for input, and if anybody offered any, I either said yes or no. And then I think I left the school about a year later, but I should have implemented what sounds like maybe a radical managerial perspective earlier, because that last year where I just told everybody else what I was doing and didn't allow their input to influence my business decisions was the smoothest year of the company. It was still irritating that the other managers didn't deal with a lot of these business operations and didn't remember a lot of the things that I did, but I cut out 90% of my trouble. I didn't have to work. I didn't go to meetings unless they were critically important, as far as I judged that importance. I would do my responsibilities that I had always done. I would take care of a few more without consulting the other managers. And I did, and it was a pretty good year. And then I decided I was done with Beijing, and I flapped my arms off and started traveling around the world. This really was a turning point where I realized that if I disagreed with business decisions, I couldn't do business with these people anymore unless I cut them out of the business process. Then I could do it for a year while I planned my exit. But I realized that all this trouble was because I was expecting other people to be more responsible than they were. The trouble I was taking onto my own shoulders just wasn't worth it. And trust me, I don't think people have to be responsible. It was my problem for expecting them to take on responsibilities that they clearly were not ready for or interested in. That played very heavily into the next school when I returned to China in Chengdu, which I'll talk about in another episode. That second school was so laid back and easy to run compared to this Beijing school afterwards, because I had no other managers. There was me and one other person, and I did most things, and she handled the rest. And that was a good school. I will talk about it soon, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you very much for listening. Give me a message at bitofarambler@gmail.com or all the socials, and I will talk to you soon.